Okay, so what if I told you we could grow tiny, working human organs in a lab dish? I know it sounds like something straight out of science fiction, right? But believe it or not, it's happening right now, and it's about to change medicine as we know it. So let's dive into the incredible microscopic world of organoids.
So just look at this. Wow. These glowing, complex structures, they're not some kind of abstract art. Nope. What you're actually looking at are clusters of human cells that have grown and organized themselves into tiny versions of our own organs. We're talking about mini organs, right here. It's literally a medical revolution happening inside a petri dish.
All right, so what are these things exactly? Well, the official name for them is organoids, and you can just think of them as mini organs, usually no bigger than a grain of rice, that scientists grow from stem cells. But here's the truly mind-blowing part. They self-organize. That means they just instinctively know how to build themselves to copy the structure and even the function of a full-sized organ. It's incredible.
Okay, so here's what we're going to cover in this explainer. First, we'll talk about why we needed this breakthrough so badly. Then, we'll get into the recipe for actually building an organoid. After that, we'll explore the amazing new medical toolbox this gives us. And finally, we'll take a peek at what their tiny future might hold.
So to really get why organoids are such a massive deal, you first have to understand this huge puzzle that researchers have been wrestling with for decades. And that puzzle is, how on earth do you study human biology and disease safely and accurately?
You see, for a long time, researchers had a few tools, but honestly, none of them were perfect. I mean, you've got animal models, right, like mice. They've been super important, for sure. But at the end of the day, a mouse just isn't a person. Then there's growing human cells in a flat 2D dish. The problem there is that our organs aren't flat. You lose all that complex 3D structure that's crucial for them to work properly. And of course, you can't just jump straight to testing new things on people. That's a huge ethical and safety problem. So there is this massive gap in research, and that's exactly the gap organoids were made to fill.
All right, so how do scientists actually cook up one of these mini organs? It's a pretty fascinating recipe, and it all starts with one of the most fundamental building blocks of life, stem cells.
The starting ingredients, so to speak, can come from a couple of different places. You can use embryonic stem cells, which have the potential to become any kind of cell. Or you can use adult stem cells from a specific tissue. But here's the part that's a total game changer. There's a technique that lets scientists take a regular adult cell, say a skin cell from your arm, and reprogram it, basically turning back its biological clock until it becomes a powerful stem cell again. Just think about what that means. It means we can create an organoid that's a perfect genetic clone for any specific patient.
The whole process really boils down to 4 main steps. Step 1, you collect the stem cells. Step 2, you put them into this gel-like matrix, which acts kind of like a biological scaffolding, giving the cells a 3D structure to grow on. Step 3, you add a special cocktail of growth factors. Now, these are the chemical signals that tell the stem cells what to become. You know, hey, you're going to be a neuron, or you're going to be a liver cell. And then, well, then the magic happens.
And that 4th and final step is self-organization. This is the really wild part. The cells, all on their own, guided by their own genetic code, just start talking to each other and arranging themselves into the complex shapes of a mini organ. They literally build themselves. So this isn't just some random blob of cells. It's a structure with a purpose, a tiny echo of the real thing.
Okay, so we figured out how to build them. That's cool. But what can you actually do with them? Well, this is where the story gets really, really exciting. Organoids have given us an entirely new toolbox to work with in medicine and research. Let's start with brain organoids. I mean, think about this. For the very first time, we can actually watch the earliest stages of a human brain developing, right there in a lab. That's something that was completely impossible to observe before. And it's giving us these incredible new insights into how the brain forms, and what might go wrong in really complex conditions like autism, or how a virus like Zika can cause such devastating damage to a developing brain. Then you have lung organoids. These little guys basically became superstars during the COVID-19 pandemic. Why? Because researchers could use them to see exactly how the SARS-CoV-2 virus gets into our lung cells. They could even test antiviral drugs on these mini lungs to see what worked. And beyond that, they're proving to be powerful tools for understanding chronic diseases like asthma and cystic fibrosis too. But this next one, this might be the most powerful application of all right now. Personalized medicine, especially for cancer. With cancer organoids, doctors can take a tiny piece of a patient's actual tumor, grow thousands of mini clones of that tumor in the lab, and then they can hit those clones with a whole bunch of different chemo drugs to see which one is the most effective killer.
It's incredible. And that brings us to the ultimate promise of this technology. I want you to just imagine this for a second. Imagine your doctor taking a simple sample of your own cells and then using those cells to grow a perfect mini version of your organ, or in the case of cancer, a mini version of your specific tumor right there in the lab.
And then, before you ever receive a single dose, they test dozens of different drugs on that biological twin to find the absolute perfect cure, tailor-made just for you. I mean, that's not just medicine. That's precision medicine at its absolute peak.
But, like with any truly revolutionary technology, it's not all smooth sailing. The future is packed with incredible promise for sure, but also some really complex challenges that we have to start thinking about.
So let's be real about the limitations here, because organoids aren't perfect copies. Not yet, anyway. For one, they're tiny, microscopic. They also don't have their own blood supply to bring in nutrients and take out waste, and they're missing all the immune cells that would be interacting with a real organ inside your body. So, while they're a fantastic model, they still can't capture the full, messy complexity of a real organ.
And that leads us to some pretty deep ethical questions. This is especially true for brain organoids. As we get better and better at making them, what happens if they start showing really complex neural activity? Now, to be perfectly clear, there is absolutely zero evidence of anything like consciousness happening. But it does force us to ask the question, at what point does a model stop being just a model? What are our responsibilities to these things we're creating?
But even with those challenges, the future here is just incredibly bright. We are seriously looking at a world where new drugs get approved way faster because we can test them more effectively. A world where we might use organoids to help regenerate damaged tissues, or, and this is the big one, maybe one day even grow replacement parts for organ transplants. And when you throw AI into the mix to analyze all the data, well, the pace of discovery is just going to explode. So if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's this. Organoids are so much more than just a cool science experiment. They represent a fundamental shift, a whole new way of studying the human body and fighting its diseases. They're making that dream of truly personalized precision medicine feel less like a dream and more like a reality. Hey, if you enjoyed this explainer and learned something new, we'd really appreciate it if you could give it a like, drop a comment, and hit that subscribe button. It really helps us out.